I think is, I think it's a bad word. I don't think growing up means that leaving childhood behind. I think growing up is taking your childhood with you as a grown-up. That you can be old, a baby, a boy, and an adult, and keep on changing which one of that part comes up for. But if you're only one, if you get stuck to only one mode of being, I think that is rigid or silly. One says that in neurosis also. If you have all the neurosis, then you are healthy. If you have only one, that is when you become sick. My father was the eldest son of his family, and I was the eldest son of the eldest son. So those kind of, in the larger family, I also had a certain position. Then also my father was posted in small provincial towns in Punjab. So he was the magistrate Saab, and in those days magistrate Saab was a great man. So, and I was kind of made very great fuss of. So there was this great feeling of being absolutely at the center of the world, and I struggled, avoided a lot, that not to get this grandiose feeling come up, which often makes me, as people tell me, much more shyer otherwise in conversations and company. I want to kind of change the subject away from myself to others, perhaps because I fear the breakthrough of that grandiosity. I think so that is, my shyness is based on that fear of, I think, from that early childhood one. This is a bunch of old letters which my father kept, and many of them are to him. We were away from him, my mother, myself. And the first one is when I was 5 years old. We are in Lahore with my grandparents, that's me and my mother, and my father is in a place called Sargodha, which is now in Pakistan. And this is just 2 days after the birth of my sister. मेरे प्यारे डैडी जी, आपका खत मिला, पढ़कर बहुत खुशी, खुशी हुई। रात दिस इज माई टीचर से कहना कि सुधीर कहता है कि 6-7 दिन तक आ जाएंगे। पढ़ाई की यहाँ बात है कि किताबें यहाँ नहीं हैं। सुधा की बात है, दैट इज माई सिस्टर्स नेम, और वॉज एट दैट टाइम, इट गॉट चेंज लेटर, कि बदन पर पित्त जैसी कोई चीज निकल आई। The other letters, next ones are when I went to boarding school for 1 year. I think I was 8 years old. My parents were Rohtak, and I was sent to modern school in Delhi. And I think these are pretty sad letters. Many of them are in Urdu, which I wrote at that time, but I can't read just now. I think the first image, the immediate image which flashes through my mind is my mother standing in front of the mirror. She's dressing out to go to a party, and she's looking absolutely beautiful, and I can even smell the scent. I mean, so that is the first visual image which stands. She's admiring herself before the mirror, preening herself, and kind of I'm looking up and admiring her with the great devotion which a small child is capable of, or a small boy is capable of towards the mother. That is, I think, my immediate visual memory which comes.
He was very thin, he was extremely thin, and he had a lot of curly hair. But what I remember very strongly are his eyes. Very limpid, liquid eyes, yes. He used to play a lot, and also read a lot. I remember him for hours, either reading or playing. I remember my father would get upset about his playing so much and reading a lot, but studying, he thought he didn't give enough time to his studies. But then all parents think that way.
So on one side was this kind of formality, which is my mother's side, a reserve, a sense of boundaries, individual distance, this is a much greater sense of what is right and wrong. And on the other side were my father's family, where there were really no boundaries. You slept wherever you could, and you went with whoever there was, uncle, aunt, who, there wasn't too much difference made between whose child you are, your own, somebody else's. You ate at whatever time you liked. So there was much greater informality of that kind. But also I think much more where right and wrong were contextual. It depends. There was a much greater sense of it depends. So for a child, much nicer place. So these were the two very big differences, and I think I carried both of them and still do in some way. What was the private world which was happening at that time? I think partly it was that being in that boarding school. I mean, there were all kind of, for the first time you met other boys, you heard things about their parents which was not the same as yours. You kind of started realizing that parents are not always benevolent, they can be cruel also. You started looking for signs of cruelty, perhaps in your own kind of, or interpreted some things like that. That is the memories of violence of the kinds of, and kind of gratuitous violence of older boys beating up younger ones, and of the demeaning part of the, you kind of go and polish their shoes, you are asked to, there's a great deal of sadism in boys, and boarding schools are full of sadism. And that is, it was one of mine, after that, never to send my son never to a boarding school. So it must have really made a strong effect, or left a strong impression on me.
I think I must have been about 6 or so, and he's a little older, 4 years or older. We went to a magic show. It was that famous Gogia Pasha's magic show. And there, he was showing us the magic. He brought this woman and then said that he would cut off the tongue. And, it was magic brought together. Now there suddenly, in the dead silence of the hall, the magic began, and this lady's tongue was cut off. And to my horror, what do I see? My brother beside me, my elder brother, who's chaperoning me to this place, has suddenly fainted. Flat! And I forgot all about the magic show. I didn't know what to do. I was just looking here and there till we found some gentleman. I mean, he couldn't take, well, there wasn't really blood, but I mean, maybe perhaps his imagining of that bloodshed or any kind of, that, I remember this, this kind of, not really cruelty, but very strong scenes. He just couldn't take. That I remember.